Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our work on Sigvald the Magnificent, Prince of Slannesh. This video we're going to work on the head, and as you can see here I've already got the head as a sub-assembly, fully assembled of course with the hair and all the horns and everything like that, and then he was given a prime of white from Stanolres using an airbrush, spraying it around 20 psi. Get it started, we're going to use some Acadian Flesh Tone and Warp Fiend Gray. We're going to mix this in roughly a 2-to-1. You'll see here I add a second dollop of the Fiend Gray here, using a brush with just a slight amount of water in the bristles just to thin the color out ever so slightly. And of course we're going to begin applying the base coat to the flesh. One thing I will point out is that as I am working around the model and painting up his face in this tone, I also paint the flesh that is on the main body as well. It is not really shown, but pretty much the steps that I go through for completing the face here are very similar to what I do for the other areas of the flesh. I didn't really feel it was entirely necessary to show those, as it was really just his hand, his bicep, and his little bits of his bum cheek showing through on his outfit. Shyish Purple is next with some contrast medium. We're going to lay a drop or two down, 2 drops, and then just a little bit into the brush. Don't really need a whole lot, and then mix that into the entirety of the dollop of paint. Very generous amount of water in my bristles just to thin the color out ever so slightly, and then begin applying it on top of the mixture from the previous step. And the previous step as well, it was given 2 layers just to get a nice smooth even coverage. You'll see here that there's quite heavy in some areas, so I clean the brush off really fast, draw out the excess moisture out of the bristles, and then just kind of begin just siphoning out the excess pigment into those areas, but allowing it to fill up some other areas, like around the eye sockets, close to the hairline, and in some of those little areas in his, his flesh. Here I'm just demonstrating that I am painting those other areas on the body as well. And you can see here, this is the base coat, and then after the purple wash, just to demonstrate. Acadian Flesh Tone with some Lamian Medium is next. I'm going to slap a little bit onto the palette. It's basically a 1-to-1 with the medium. Basically, we will turn this into a thin little glaze, and this is just to reestablish more of the flesh tone. We're going to begin the highlighting process here. So in the typical fashion, I'm going to begin applying highlights in the imagined light sourcing being directly above the model, and so more of the light will gather on the forehead, the brow, the bridge of the nose, down to the tip of the nostrils, the top of the cheekbone, following the jawline, the upper lip, bottom lip, and then of course I guess it's tendons that are in the neck and everything like that, and those, I can't remember what those muscles are called. I'm sure you all know what the muscles I'm talking about here, but you can see here along the collar and everything like that, we're just reestablishing some of those tones. And we will go over these areas more than once, just building up the color as we do. We're going to use some Acadian Flesh Tone and Kislev Flesh with a little bit of medium, kind of a 1-to-1 sort of a mixed ratio. And here you'll see I'm just simply going to add a drop of medium. This is just, again, to thin the color out a little bit. And with the dampness of the brush, we can work this into a glaze. But I find that with just a little bit of medium here, you can pretty much just glaze these highlights in. And here I'm just being very, very careful, building up these highlights. Really, it's just the central point on the forehead, the brow as well, and of course the tip of the nose, and building those highlights towards the end of the nose, as well as catching the top of the nostrils as well as we work our way around, catching the top of the cheeks. And of course the tip of the chin, allowing some of that deeper color to reside within the shadows. Again, going for this more purpley type of tone on his flesh, just, to kind of stay within the realms of kind of a supernatural type of vibe for this guy. Again, he is kind of possessed by Slaanesh, so, he would have those chaos attributes and, weirdness. But as you can see, it's pretty straightforward here. We're painting them up kind of, in the normal fashion when we typically apply color on faces and such. But again, it's really just that hint of purple in there that I want. Otherwise, we are going to build up a fairly bright flesh tone. And it doesn't feel out of place painting them up, with really, really bright tones. Kislev flesh, we're going to add that to our mixture, so making it sort of like a 1 to 2 to 1. I actually added more medium, so it's actually 2 medium really to this mixture. It's a very thin color, and again, we're being very, very deliberate where we're applying these highlights. And here you'll see that basically we are just being very, very careful where we apply highlights. And it's actually kind of funny that I did most of this on camera, because usually I like to get in really close and have a look where I'm applying color, but as it turns out, I was able to maintain angle, and so that I can demonstrate this for you all. Usually I kind of cut away and then we'll finish off these details and refine these things, as it were. Again, it is a very, very minimal amount of color we're using here, and again, with every one of these layers, we are applying more than once. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. It's just really kind of building it up to eye. And with these tones and building up this contrast, I do want to maintain that darker tone in the flesh. Again, more time being spent here because, again, this is the central point of the model. We're taking some flayed one flesh here, adding it to that previous mixture. Just really kind of, grabbing a dollop. And again, whenever I am grabbing amounts of paint, I try to be fairly consistent with how much paint I'm grabbing so that I can duplicate, if necessary, these color mixtures later on down the road. Which is why, obviously being consistent when you are painting is so important, so that you can replicate what you've done, especially if this is something that you were working on and was a character piece for whatever army, and of course it's many years later and you go, oh well, how did I do that? And of course if you're fairly consistent with how you go about things, and of course keeping notes as well, it'll help. Black Templar contrast is next. Just a little bit onto the palette, just thin it out just with the dampness of water, and it's just to pick out the eye socket, and so that we're beginning our eyeballs. Next is White Scar, and as you may or may not have guessed, yes, we're going to fill in the eyeballs themselves, trying to get the entirety of the eyeball. I do cut away for this, as it is kind of tricky to get into those spots, and you'll see I end up getting a little bit down in below onto the eye socket, so we'll grab some of that previous color and just neaten that up, and then just really quick, just kind of following along the bottom eyelid, and it just clears that up. Again, where there was Black Templar, you can see some of the white cuts over that, and don't worry, we can fix that later on. We're jumping back into the Shyish purple, and I've thinned it out with just a little, or no, I'm sorry, this is the pure color itself, and I'm using this to simply draw the eyes in. And I'm not doing the eyes looking straight ahead, I'm actually doing the eyeballs kind of looking off to the side. So we're going to the left side, because his head has a tilt when he's fully assembled, and so I kind of want him looking directly forward, but his head is kind of tilted to the side, and so I felt it was kind of fun to just do his eyes looking off to one side. Shyish purple on its own, thinning it out with just a bit of water here, and this is really just for the lips, and I also apply a little bit in his upper eyelids as well, kind of like a bit of like an eyeshadow, as it were. Again, playing with the theme of the model being excessive, I figured he'd be very concerned about his appearance, so haha. Celestra Gray and Warp Fiend Gray is next. We're going to mix these in a 1-to-1 mix ratio. This is going to be for the hair. We're going to use some medium just to thin this out so it flows nicely into all the little areas. And then very quickly here, we are going to apply multiple coats onto these areas. Basically, this is just a base coating phase here, so I'm just being very deliberate as I get close to the face, but when we get to the back side of the hair or the underside here, I will switch to a different brush because it just covers the areas more completely, as it were. After about 2 coats, we're going to jump back into some Celestra Gray. We're going to add some retardant to this mixture, or not mixture, I should say. It's just pure color. Pretty much a 1-to-1. And we are basically going to do is lay some of this color down really, really fast. Here I'm just using a larger, the shade wash brush to apply the color. Again, this is kind of the brush that gets a lot of the dirty work, as it were, for a lot of my paint gathering and stuff like that. You can see here I'm laying the color down about halfway up the hair, and then I clean the brush off and then begin feathering the color out to create my transition of color. I could have just as easily used the airbrush as well, and I had considered doing that, but I figured I might as well just stick with the brush and just demonstrate this the entirety of the process going through creating this blend through the hair. And again, I also do this on the underside as well. Any of these little tendrils of hair get a little bit more attention, but otherwise I just simply lay the color down, clean the brush off, and then feather the hair out. Because it has the retardant in it, I do have quite a bit of working time here. It's about 5-10 minutes at this mixture, and especially working with the paint in a thinned out fashion like this, where I'm laying thin layers down, you still have to move somewhat quickly as you apply the color. Here I'm just showing just the part in his hair, and then quickly just feathering it out and going for that slight transition. I also push some of the color down towards the back of his head. Anywhere where it feels like it needs a little bit more color built up, I just simply take my detail brush here and then begin laying the color down and then following some of those little tendrils up. And again, just kind of cleaning up some areas here and there on the front of the face. I also catch the top part of his hair at the uppermost portion of his brow. And then, of course, the tendrils coming out from his sideburns as well. Here I'm just quickly demonstrating that I'm also doing the underside of the hair as well. And again, because it has that retardant in it, I can simply just lay color down and then quickly kind of feather it out. You have a little bit of time. You actually don't have really, hours of time to blend that out. You only have, short amount of time. Here I'm just coming in with some pure Celestra Gray just for the ends of the hair, just reestablishing some of those points. Again, I'm still using a larger brush to accomplish this, as it is a fairly large surface area, and as I work the color back and forth. This is also after I had waited for the previous layer to completely dry, which is basically I just used a hair dryer to speed that process along. It really doesn't take that long. Adding the retardant in only basically gives you probably about 15-20 minutes of work time to play with the color and blend it out. And so it's a really good solution for those wanting to, create more, stunning blends on their models. Ulthuan Gray is next. We're going to slap that onto the palette. Just the dampness of the brush to thin it out. A heavy amount of water in the bristles. You can see the bristles were quite swollen with the color. And then here we're just going to be very deliberate as we apply our layerings here, because we have the paint in a thinned out consistency. If you're very, very fast, you can clean the brush off or use another brush that's clean and feather this color out to your desired results, as it were. Here, just very carefully trying to catch the tops of those hairs just to really kind of frame the face. Here on the little tendrils of hair, we just simply come in and then just really quickly here. Yeah, you can see here I'm feathering out the color. Again, if you're fairly quick about this, you can accomplish this really easily, and with a bit of practice. Again, as with all things, it does not take that long. Just move a bit of color quickly, rinse off the brush, or use another brush, and then just feather that color out. Again, it's just simply just being more efficient with your use of your brush strokes and your time to achieve your desired results. Here, it's just a quick look around of the head. Next, we're going to jump into some Praxetti White. This is a Citadel Dry. I'm going to use a larger dry brush for this, and I'm going to concentrate just on the ends of the hair. We're doing this with a dry brush because I just want to catch just the tops of angles, but I also run it along the main body of hair, again, allowing some of that color to catch some of those high points. I didn't really want a super contrasty kind of look to the hair, as I just, I really wasn't feeling. I wanted the hair to be fairly bright with that slight purpley gray tone in there. And so again, it's just, catching just some of those odd hairs here and there, just a little bit of white, especially if you pulled a lot of your hair color out of your bristles. You really don't deposit that much color once you get to it. Ushabti Bone is next. Slap a little bit onto our palette, just the dampness of the brush to thin it color out ever so slightly, and we will apply more than one layer down. And here I'm simply using my shade wash brush to apply this onto these areas, or maybe it's my detail brush. I can't remember which brush it is. It really doesn't matter, as long as whatever brush you have, the greatest control with. After 2 layers, and of course that sets to dry, we're going to come in with some Skeleton Horde. This is from Contrast. A really fantastic color. We're going to slap this a very generous amount down, building up more color towards the tip of the horns. as we work our way through. And if you're fairly quick, you can feather out the color at the base. Here you can see I lay a little bit down, then clean the brush off and draw the excess off that bottom point. It's just so that we get a slight tint in the or color variation in the bottom of the horn where it connects up to his head, and then it's going to go a deeper color towards the ends of the horns. And we do that for all 4 horns. And here you can see I'm just quickly feathering off that color off the base there, just so that we can, you know, get a transition going on. Once it's dry, we will apply another layering of Skeleton Horde, this time not quite as far down the horn. It's pretty much just a little bit over halfway down the horn here. And again, if you thin the color out with like a little bit of water or mediums or contrast medium, you do get a little bit more control over creating these glazes. But essentially, when you're working with contrast in this fashion, it is glazes you're working in. Sigor Brown is next. This is a very generous amount onto the bristles, and you can see it goes on and almost looks like black right away. Here I quickly tried to feather it, but I already had a little bit of a tide mark where it started to dry in the end, so I thought, oh no. We'll have to correct that later on, but that's fine. You can see there left a little tide mark here. I simply just come in with the pure color itself, go about 1/3 the way down on the what looks like our left-hand side. You can see it's just a pretty abrupt step there. And so again, for anybody else doing this, we're going to use some contrast medium, 2 drops, a little bit in the brush, thin it down. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to go about halfway down the horn, and then we're just going to basically marry up those transitions there. So we're going to allow a little bit of that color to reside between the two, and that's going to give us our gradient. And here you can see them. We will apply more than 1 layer. I just quickly feather out the color just because it's a little bit abrupt. And again, it's really, really fun just kind of quickly working the color like this. And you can push the color any which way you want, as far down the horn as you want. But I was happy with where it was at this moment. And I really didn't feel like it was needing any kind of further treatment. And with the medium in there, you can see it has a slight shine to it. And that's fine, as it does add to that, horniness, as it were. And it feels more like big bull horns on his head. But that is it. That is the head of Sigvald. I almost said Sigmund. Sigvald. Next, we'll continue on with the shield. Big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and you'll be taken off to a magical website called Patreon, where there are varying tiers of support. And a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.